back in 1660, um, 3 people were hanged in Gloucester. Actually, one of them was burned as a witch.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was all for this brutal murder. The authorities had a confession, they had a motive, and, they executed the guilty parties. But there was just one massive problem.
Right, the victim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
2 years later, the victim just casually stepped off a ship from Lisbon, like very much alive.
Which is, I mean, it was catastrophic failure of the legal system.
Yeah.
Because for centuries, the court struggled with this terrifying paradox. Like,
Yeah.
how do you definitively prove a life was taken if the victim simply vanished?
I don't have the proofs.
Exactly. So that 17th century disaster, it forced the law to demand absolute physical proof. It created these strict rules that would eventually, protect the innocent, but inadvertently hand this massive advantage to the guilty.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating stack of sources for you today, including an academic medical legal lecture, some historical archives, a Wikipedia entry, and a true crime documentary transcript.
It's a great mix of materials.
It really is. And our mission today is to explore how the presence or, the total absence of a human body can completely warp the justice system. Okay, let's unpack this, because we are going to trace this legal tightrope all the way to one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries of the 20th century.
And to really understand how we get to that mystery, we kind of need to look at the mechanics of that 1660 disaster you mentioned. It's known as the Campton Wonder.
Right, the Campton Wonder.
Yeah. So a 7-year-old man named William Harrison, he left his home in Chipping Campton to collect some rent money, and he just vanished.
Just totally gone.
Completely. And searchers, they found his slashed hat and a bloodstained shirt on the main road, but no body. So the authorities really pressured his servant, this guy John Perry.
And he caved, right?
He did. He eventually gave this wild, completely false confession. He claimed his own mother, Joan, and his brother Richard murdered Harrison for his money.
Which is just wild to implicate your own family like that.
I know. And Joan and Richard, they denied it to the bitter end. But the courts were just desperate for a resolution, so they took John Perry at his word, and all 3 were executed.
And then 2 years later, Harrison just shows up.
He shows up, claiming he had been kidnapped by pirates and sold into slavery in Turkey.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, the British legal establishment was just completely humiliated. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this sheer embarrassment birthed the strict no body, no murder rule in English law.
Right. They were like, never again.
Exactly. The doctrine dictated that the state could never again execute someone unless they possessed the physical corpse, proving a death actually occurred. It was designed as an absolute safeguard against coerced confessions.
Which, I mean, you can totally see the logic there. It's like trying to solve a complex puzzle, but you don't even know if the puzzle box has actually been opened yet.
That's a really good way to put it.
The murder weapon, the motive, the witness testimony, those are all just like pieces. But the body is the picture on the box. Without it, you're just guessing. But any rule built with such rigid parameters is, eventually going to be tested by someone looking for a workaround.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Killers soon realized that if the law requires a physical body, well, the ultimate legal defense is just a shovel.
Right. Just get rid of it.
Destroying or hiding the victim meant virtual immunity. The shield for the innocent had essentially become a blueprint for the guilty.
And that blueprint was brutally exploited in the 20th century. Our sources highlight the 1919 case of Mamie Stewart.
Yes, the Mamie Stewart case.
She was this young musical actress who found out her violent husband, George Shotton, was actually a bigamist.
Wow.
And Mamie was terrified of him. She actually wrote to her mother saying that if she ever went missing, they needed to search for her.
Which is so chilling.
It is. And by the winter of that year, she disappeared without a trace.
But the circumstantial evidence against Shotton was just overwhelming. There was an 83-year-old local postman, Bill Simons, who actually surprised Shotton outside his cottage while Shotton was struggling to carry this remarkably heavy sack.
Right, and Shotton's reaction was wild.
Yeah, he turned entirely white and blurted out, "God, for a minute I thought you were a policeman."
Which is pretty much a confession right there.
I mean, essentially, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the authorities found themselves completely paralyzed by that 17th century doctrine. No body meant no murder charge.
So they could only get him on bigamy. He served like 18 months in prison for having 2 wives and then just walked out a free man.
He completely beat the system.
He really did. And it wasn't until decades later in 1961 that a group of potholers were exploring an abandoned metal mine in Wales. They moved this heavy slate slab and found that exact sack containing Mamie's sawn-up remains.
And this is where the forensic science of the era takes this huge leap forward. To prove it was Mamie, investigators used this pioneering photographic superimposition technique.
Wait, how did that work back then?
So they didn't just look at a photo. They scaled a high-contrast image of her recovered skull to exactly match the anatomical proportions of a studio portrait from her acting career.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. By perfectly aligning the cheekbones, the jawline, and the eye sockets over the photograph, they provided undeniable physical proof of her identity.
But the science arrived way too late for actual justice.
Way too late. George Schotten had already died of natural causes in 1958 at the age of 81.
Ugh, that is so frustrating. And he wasn't an isolated incident either. The sources also talk about the tragic 1937 case of a 10-year-old girl named Mona Tinsley.
Right.
She was lured away by this notorious local guy known as Uncle Fred, Frederick Nodder.
And the premeditation in Nodder's case is just chillin'. He took Mona on a bus to a town 23 miles away. And the prosecution brought forward the bus conductor who testified to this devastating detail.
This part is so grim.
It is. Nodder purchased a return ticket for himself, but only a single ticket for little Mona.
He knew before they even boarded that she wouldn't be coming back.
Exactly. He fully intended it. Yet, despite that glaring proof of intent, they couldn't locate Mona's body. So the presiding judge, the famous Judge Swift, found his hands completely tied by the law.
Because of the no body rule again?
Right. He could only sentence Nodder for the lesser crime of child abduction, capping the punishment at a maximum of just 7 years.
7 years for what everyone knew was murder.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for the legal system? It really feels like the law is actively participating in a miscarriage of justice by, prioritizing a 300-year-old rule over common sense.
It creates a staggering psychological torment for the victims' families. You're compounding the ambiguous loss of their loved one with the reality of, watching a killer literally smirk in the courtroom.
Yeah, because everyone knows what happened.
The courts knew these men were murderers. The public knew it. But the law requires empirical proof. Justice delayed truly became justice denied.
But our sources take us to a scenario that completely flips this legal paradox inside out. We've seen the nightmare of having a murder but no body. But what happens when the situation is inverted? You have a meticulously hidden, murdered body, providing all the physical proof the law demands.
But you have absolutely no idea who the victim is.
Exactly.
You step into this total informational vacuum. And that inversion brings us to Hegley Wood in Worcestershire and the enduring mystery of Bella in the Wych Elm.
Okay, let's jump to April 18th, 1943. We've got 4 local boys, Bob Farmer, Thomas Willits, Robert Hart, and Fred Payne, and they're trespassing on Lord Cobham's estate, illegally poaching and hunting for birds' nests.
Right, just kids being kids in the woods.
Yeah. And one of them, Bob Farmer, scales this massive, ancient wych elm tree. He peers down into the hollow trunk expecting to find a nest, and instead he's staring right at a human skull.
And because they were trespassing, the boys actually swore a pact of silence and put the skull back.
Which is crazy to think about.
I know, but the youngest boy, Willits, he was so traumatized by what he saw that he eventually confessed to his parents that night.
Thank goodness he did.
Right. And when police arrived, they found a near-complete skeleton of an adult woman hidden inside the tree. They recovered a shoe, a cheap gold wedding ring, and fragments of clothing. But strangely, one of her hands was found severed and scattered a short distance from the tree.
Okay, the forensic pathology applied here by Professor James Webster from the Home Office is super fascinating.
It really is.
Because he found a piece of taffeta fabric lodged deep inside her mouth and throat. And the placement is key here. This wasn't a case where she, accidentally swallowed something or passed out. The depth of the fabric indicated an active, forced suffocation.
Right, a clear murder weapon.
But his most brilliant deduction actually came from the tree itself.
Yes. Webster measured the exact width of the hollow opening in the trunk, and he realized that a rigid, dead body could never have been manipulated through such a narrow gap.
It just wouldn't fit.
Exactly. She had to have been placed inside the trunk still warm before rigor mortis set in. And based on the decomposition, he estimated she had been dead for roughly 18 months, which placed the murder around October 1941.
See, I have to actively question the killer's methodology here.
How so?
Well, why go through the immense, terrifying physical effort of lifting a warm, dead weight high up into the hollow of a tree in the pitch black of a wartime night? I mean, why not just bury her under the leaves in the vast woods?
It's just a highly calculated mindset, right? I mean, burying a body in a shallow forest grave leaves it vulnerable to scavenging animals, or, accidental discovery by people walking off paths.
Hmm.
Placing her inside a high, hollow trunk essentially creates a natural vault.
Oh, that makes sense.
But it also presents this stark contrast. You have the sheer chaos of 1941. The Blitz is displacing thousands of people. Missing persons reports are just skyrocketing. And against that massive national trauma, you have this incredibly specific, intimate, and physically demanding crime scene.
That is so true. And the police, they had her distinctive dental records, and they cross-referenced them with every dentist in the country and thousands of wartime missing persons files.
And nothing.
Nothing matched. They had the ultimate physical proof of a murder, which completely satisfied that 17th century law, but zero identity. And human nature absolutely abhors a vacuum.
It really does.
When investigators can't provide facts, the public will inevitably invent them.
And the silence surrounding this case bred a very unique kind of folklore. And it all started with graffiti.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In 1944, mysterious messages started appearing chalked on brick walls. The first one in Old Hill asked, "Who put Lou Bella down the Wych Elm?"
Louis Bella, yeah.
And then shortly after, in Birmingham, another one read, "Who put Bella down the Wych Elm? Hagley Wood."
Which, this raises an important question. Who was risking wartime blackout regulations to write this stuff?
Seriously, getting caught outside was dangerous.
Right. And the police noted the text was positioned unusually high on the walls, like far out of reach of local children. So they theorized it might be an early morning farm produce worker, someone tall enough to reach that height while, standing on a horse-drawn cart coming into the city.
Wow, that's specific.
But was it the killer taunting the police? A witness drowning in guilt? Or simply a local prankster capitalizing on the morbid news?
Whoever held that chalk inadvertently achieved something massive. They gave this unknown woman a permanent name, Bella. Even if it was completely fabricated, the graffiti cemented her identity in the local consciousness.
It became a whole thing.
A generational tradition. In the 1970s, the phrase appeared on the nearby Wychbury obelisk. By 1999, it had morphed slightly into "Who put Bella in the Wych Elm?" spelled WIPCH. And as recently as 2020, a suspected graffiti artist named Hers altered it to read, "Hers put Bella in the Wych Elm."
It's amazing how it evolved. But graffiti was only the beginning. As the decades rolled on, the informational void was filled with increasingly elaborate theories. And these theories perfectly illustrate how the trauma and paranoia of World War II shaped the public's imagination.
Okay, the espionage angle is the most famous one. People convinced themselves Bella was Clara Boyrley, this German cabaret singer and Nazi spy.
Oh, the spy theory.
Yeah, and the theory gained traction because Joseph Jacobs, who was actually the last spy executed by firing squad at the Tower of London in 1941, he parachuted into England carrying a photograph of a woman named Clara.
That's quite a coincidence.
Right. So the rumor mill decided Clara had made it to the Midlands and was assassinated for knowing too much.
It plays out like a cinematic thriller, but declassified archive records completely dismantle it.
Oh, they do?
Yeah. Clara Boyrley never set foot in England. She actually died of veronal poisoning, an overdose of a specific sleeping pill in a Berlin hospital in December 1942. The timeline and the location make it an absolute impossibility.
Okay, well then we have the pub confession from 1953.
Right, Una Mossop.
Yeah. Una stepped forward claiming her ex-husband Jack and a Dutchman named Van Raalte were drinking with a woman named Bella. The story goes that Bella became aggressively drunk, passed out, and the men shoved her into the hollow tree simply to teach her a lesson, intending for her to wake up trapped and scared.
Which is a terrible prank.
Right. And Jack Mossop supposedly lost his mind from the guilt, suffering horrific nightmares of a skull in a tree, and died in a mental institution before the body was ever discovered.
It is a compelling narrative of guilt and accidental death, but the forensic reasoning just tears it apart.
How so?
Well, first, Una Mossop waited a full 10 years after her ex-husband's death to share this revelation. But more critically, it completely ignores Professor Webster's central finding.
Oh, the taffeta.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bella did not pass out and accidentally choke. The taffeta was forcefully shoved deep into her throat, deliberately blocking her airway.
Yeah.
That is an intentional, hands-on murder, not a prank gone wrong.
Wow. Yeah. But the absolute wildest theory involves the occult. Professor Margaret Alice Murray, who was literally known as the grandmother of Wicca, she championed the idea that Bella was the victim of a black magic coven.
The witchcraft theory.
Yes. Because one of Bella's hands was found severed from the body, Murray insisted it was an occult ritual to create a hand of glory. Our sources note this concept stems from an 18th century grimoire called the Petit Albert, where a severed hand is used as macabre magical candle holder.
It sounds so bizarre.
The police actually entertained this long enough to try and link it to another local unsolved pitchfork murder.
They did. Scotland Yard briefly considered the possibility of a satanic coven operating in the Midlands, but forensic logic eventually prevailed.
Thank goodness.
The severed hand wasn't cleanly amputated in a ritualistic manner. The scattering of the bones was almost certainly the result of animal scavenging over the 18 months the body sat decomposing in the woods.
Honestly, it is so frustrating to read through these wild theories. I mean, wait, isn't it infinitely more likely that Bella was an unhoused refugee fleeing the devastation of the Birmingham Blitz? Or perhaps the missing sex worker literally named Luabella, who was reported missing to police by a colleague in 1944. Like, why does the public leap straight to satanic cabals and Nazi paratroopers?
What's fascinating here is the defense mechanism inherent in human psychology. People gravitate toward elaborate cinematic narratives because espionage and witchcraft assign a grand meaning to the violence.
Oh, I see.
It implies a larger structured battle between good and evil. It is profoundly harder for a community to accept the mundane, terrifying reality that vulnerable, marginalized women are often the victims of everyday domestic violence or quiet predation, and society simply doesn't notice when they disappear.
That is a harsh but really necessary reality check. Which brings us to the modern day, where you would assume science could finally cut through the folklore.
You'd hope so.
Right. In 2018, Caroline Wilkinson at Face Lab, the same cutting-edge team who reconstructed King Richard III's face, created a stunning digital facial reconstruction of Bella based on archived photographs of her skull. They gave her back her distinctive overbite, her facial structure.
And building on that momentum, in 2023, the BBC actually launched a nationwide appeal to museums. Modern forensics has evolved to a point where genetic genealogy can trace an identity from the smallest bone fragment.
It's incredible what they can do now.
Right. If they could extract Bella's DNA, they could find her living relatives. The scientific key to unlock this 80-year-old mystery finally exists.
The lock is gone.
Yeah.
The transcript from Midnight Case Files delivers this incredibly cynical, devastating twist. Bones can speak today, family trees can speak today, but Bella's physical remains are missing.
It's unbelievable.
They were transferred to the Birmingham City Police Black Museum at their Tally Ho Training Center, where they sat until the late 60s or 70s, and then, through sheer bureaucratic oversight, they just vanished from traceable custody.
They've gone.
It's incredibly frustrating, but also completely believable. Bureaucratic carelessness ended up doing exactly what the killer couldn't, permanently erasing her physical identity.
It really is the ultimate tragedy of the physical evidence doctrine. I mean, the law from 1660 demanded a physical body to prove a crime. Bella provided that body. But because the institutions charged with preserving that evidence failed, she remains nameless.
Such a sad irony.
As the sources poetically summarize it, the case becomes a locked room and the key may have been misplaced decades ago.
Yeah.
Science finally caught up, but the physical proof couldn't survive the wait.
So let's look at the incredible arc of this journey. We started with the absolute disaster of the Campton Wonder in the 1600s, where false confessions led to executions, forcing the law to demand a physical corpse.
Right.
We saw how savvy killers like George Shotton and Frederick Nodder figured out that destroying the body meant destroying the legal system's ability to touch them. And finally, the dark irony of Bella in the Wych Elm. She was found, the murder was proven, but her identity and ultimately her physical remains were completely lost to time and bureaucracy.
It is a stark reminder of the fragility of justice. The entire system relies on the meticulous preservation of truth. When we lose the physical connection to the victim, we lose our ability to speak on their behalf.
And that leads to a final thought for you to mull over. We've spent this entire deep dive examining physical bodies, sawn up in abandoned mines, shoved into hollow trees, vanishing from police stations. But consider the hyper-connected world you live in right now.
It's a very different world.
It is. Your digital footprints are tracked every single second of the day. Your phone's GPS, your credit card transactions, your social media logins. Is it even possible for a Bella scenario to happen today? Or have our sprawling digital data trails become the modern equivalent of the physical body, making it virtually impossible for anyone to ever truly vanish without a trace?
It really challenges us to think about how the very concept of identity has shifted, from flesh and bone to data and servers.
Maybe today the legal system isn't looking for a physical body in a forest. Maybe it's just looking for a sudden, violent break in the data. But as Bella's missing remains prove, if the people in charge misplace the records.
The truth stays buried in the dark.
Exactly. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.